Okay, I think we could start now. We have, well, quite a number of participants. So first of all, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to all colleagues and partners joining this meeting, which is a peer exchange webinar on UN and regional monitoring and reporting on children's rights to a healthy environment, including a safe climate. And my name is Eva Gedermark, and I am the co-chair of the Community of Practice of Save the Children's Technical Working Group on Monitoring and Demanding Child Rights. And we are organizing this webinar in collaboration with the SIDA Civil Society Program. And the SIDA Civil Society Strengthening Program is implemented during 22 to 26. And it's across over 20 countries. And among its quality perspectives are rights-based programming, advocacy, as well as the climate and environment perspective. This webinar is also co-sponsored by the How to Child Rights series, which helped us opening the webinar to more practitioners across the sector and having interpretation available in several languages. As I said, this webinar will focus on UN and regional monitoring and reporting on the realization of children's rights to a healthy environment, including a safe climate. This is the second webinar today, so we had one in the morning. And today in this seminar, we will have interpretation into Spanish and French. The aim of this experience sharing and peer learning is to inspire increased integration of climate change and environmental impacts on children's rights into civil society and children's supplementary reports that we could submit to the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, and the submissions to the UN Universal Periodic Review process as well. So there are three mechanisms that we are going to cover today. Most important, we will look at how the General Comment 26 issued by the Committee on the Rights of the Child quite recently can be an important instrument in this work. And our ultimate aim is, of course, to advance states' accountability for children's rights to a clean and healthy, sustainable environment and sustainable environment. We also want to give a word of thanks to Child Rights Connect, especially Fanny, Maria, Leire, Emma, for the support in preparing this session and disseminating info about this webinar. So on the agenda today, we will start with the background about the status of reporting and monitoring on the rights to a healthy environment. And Laura will take us through that. And she is the environment advisor at Save the Children. We will have a panel of colleagues and partners from Peru, Denmark, Malawi, and Colombia, who will be interviewed to share experiences, tips, and tricks on how to integrate better climate environment in reporting, monitoring, and follow-up of the recommendation from UN and regional human rights mechanisms, and how we could make effective use of the General Comment in child rights reporting. We will also want to welcome the panelists. So maybe you can turn on your cameras. So we have Fatima, we have Amelie, Henry, Dominique, and Monica, and Clement. So here we have our panelists. So you will hear more that we talk in a few minutes. We will then open the floor after the presentations and the interviews and the dialogue with the panelists for you, all participants, to ask questions and share your own tips and advice. And finally, we will invite Dr. Elvis Bocala from the Global Campus on Human Rights, who will conclude and reflect on what we have heard in this webinar. But before I pass the word to Law, we just have some housekeeping rules that we just want to bring to your attention. So as you know, the webinar is being recorded, and we will share the recording with all of you afterwards, together with relevant documentation as well. Also, please be aware that we have the pleasure to have children and young people attending this seminar. So we will just remind about the safeguarding principles here. So we will therefore strive to speak as clear as possible, not using abbreviations. And we will treat everyone with respect, irrespective of age, sex, origin, or other grounds. June Liu will be your child safeguarding person in case you see anything that you think is uncomfortable or inappropriate. So please let her know, and you'll find her in the chat. You can find her contact details. Or feel also free, of course, to ask questions as the webinar unfolds. And we encourage you particularly to use the Q&A box. And please, when you write a question, we kindly ask you to make sure that you briefly introduce yourself and also indicate for whom the question is intended. So by that, I will now give the floor to Laura to start the presentation on the background. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eva. Hi, everybody. My name is Laura Abado, and I am a child rights and environment advisor at Save the Children, and also involved with the How to Child Rights series. Great to have you all here. Can I please ask you now to be ready to use some codes that I would like to take you to Mentimeter. So those of you who can see the chat box, you will see there will be a link to click on, or you can also do www.menti.com, and you have a code you can enter. It's 52715598. 52715598. You will also see it in the chat box. The idea with this first questions is to see who's in the room, but also to, also assess where we are at in understanding these issues that we will talk about today, which we will also ask again at the end of the meeting to see if we have learned anything from this session. So I hope you are ready and that most of you have been able to connect. I will start by putting this first question. Which country are you joining us from? Colombia, Denmark, Myanmar. Myanmar, that's late for you. Yeah, please add on. Great. USA, welcome everybody. Colleagues from Asia, I'm really impressed that you're up this late. Thank you so much. And I can see colleagues from Mexico. Okay, please continue writing in. I just see there's a diverse group of colleagues coming in, and really super and very welcome. I will move to the next question for you, just to make sure to know also from those of you here in the call today, which area you feel represents best your areas of expertise. Are you more a climate change environmental expert? Are you more a child rights expert? Are you both? And of course, you can have other expertise, but just for the sake of this webinar, we want to see which areas that you feel more strong about, where you have most competence in, because also we will adapt the information accordingly. Okay, I see majority of child rights experts, a bit less of climate experts, some of both. Okay, great. Thank you very much. The next question is for you to assess your, to tell us as well, have you been engaged so far in reporting on child rights and the environment or climate to any human rights process so far? If it's yes to the UN Convention Committee on the Rights of the Child, is it yes to the Universal Periodic Review of the Human Rights Council of the UN? Or is it yes to the African Charter of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child? Or not at all? I see majority is saying not involved, but still many have involved with the UNCRC. Oh, it's okay, I see it's changing. So I can see still many of you would like to learn about this issue. So let's move on to the next question. And many of you can share with us experiences, which is wonderful. In a scale of 1 to 10. So now really that's for you to assess yourself, okay? So from 1 to 10, how would you assess right now your level of understanding of civil society reporting on child rights to a healthy environment? Just give yourself 1 to 10, and then you will see at the end of the session if anything would change. It's quite good. We have a bit of everything. Quite in the middle. Thank you so much. Just for the sake of time, I'm moving, but it's really, really good to know. We will compare that at the end. But I see mostly is on the left side. How would you assess your level of understanding of UN Committee on the Rights of the Child General Comment number 26 that was just released, and its role in reporting and monitoring of child rights? So how will it help you? Do you feel you know a lot about how it will help you in reporting, monitoring child rights to a healthy environment? Some of you really feel very confident with that. Okay, I'm really, really happy to see this. So I see that we have a really relevant session for you today from these answers. Thank you so much. And we will see what happens at the end, okay? Thank you so much. So I will move on to just to see, because we have a diverse group of people with different backgrounds here today. I will give a bit of a very, very short introduction, background about environmental hazards affecting children, and then a bit of the reporting process, a bit of the general comment 26, and then we can go into the panel with our colleagues here today. So just as you see, in terms of environmental hazards affecting children, you will hear about air pollution, water contamination and scarcity, soil contamination and degradation, loss of biodiversity and ecosystem services, hazardous chemical substances, toxins and waste. And all these hazards can be exacerbated by climate-related extreme weather events, climate variability, and gradual change in weather patterns. All this to say that both climate change and environmental hazards, and especially in combination, negatively affect children and almost every right they have. So this is where we are. We're moving from the effects of children to the rights of children. I will go a bit more in detail about the impacts. So what are children vulnerability? Why are children more vulnerable? So there's some vulnerability usually we talk about that are for all children because they are children, because of their physique, their physiology. And in addition to that, you will see individual context and intersecting identities. So that child, not only it's a child in front of a flooding, for example. First, a 1-year-old child in a flooding is much more vulnerable than an adult, right? And depending on the age of the child, but also it can be very, very dependent on the gender, on disability, on other aspects that affect the geographic location. Are they in the city? Are they in a urban setting? A rural setting, etc. So there's all these aspects that contribute to an individual assessment of individual vulnerability of a child. But it's all about rights, right? Being vulnerable to something. When we are coming here together today is to show that this is also about children's rights. It's not just that they're suffering from something. Their rights are violated. And in a sense, there's a duty bearer to hold those, to be held to account. There is states who are supposed to take care of it. And usually we can speak of different rights holders and duty bearers, but today in terms of duty bearers, we'll focus on the state. because that's the main duty bearer. There's many legal and political commitments that are made. On the right side, you will see, our colleagues are today at COP28. There's a lot of discussions about COP. There's other treaties that relate to environmental issues. And then we who are more child rights, we know about the left side and the SDGs. We will talk about development, sustainable development, that are also commitments there for children. And we will talk about Convention on the Rights of the Child. We'll talk about General Comment 26. What we want is to bring those together. And there's different ways to bring those together. But what is good with this General Comment 26 that just was released in September is that it's the first time that really there's a recognition of children's right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. And it really describes how environmental degradation and climate change affects the fulfillment of children's rights. It really looks at the articles that already are in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the UN one, and really sees it from an angle of climate and environment. And that is like an example is, for example, the right to health in Article 24. Then the general comment will say a bit more. For example, it introduce features into social security policies and social protection floors that provide children and their families with protection against environmental shocks and slow onset harms, including from climate change. So those kind of things would not be in the convention, but the general comment will bring. And what's important for this call today is it's the benchmark for state action or inaction. So the committee, when they will meet state on a regular basis, it will actually look at what's in the general comment and ask questions and really provide recommendations to the states in relation to climate and environment. So as you can see, the content of the general comment, it really covers all areas of rights and state obligation. What is the state supposed to do? And it's the basis on that that informs what we would say and do as well towards the state. But also this decision that just came out in September as well, that among all the clusters of rights that states will have to report to on a regular basis on how they implement the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, one cluster will be on environment and climate change, and that's where general comment will be informing this process. So that's really good for us to know, because many of you would not have engaged with the general comment when you did your report so far to the UPR, CRC, to the African Charter. Even the African Charter, I think this general comment is very relevant too, although it's the UN system. Still, like for the future, it can inform future actions and future work we're doing. For those of you who are new to reporting, so you need to follow me slowly with the slide just to understand, because I couldn't put, I'm using Mentimeter, I couldn't put everything gradually coming into the screen. So there are monitoring and review processes, both at the UN level and regional level. Today, we're focusing on the UN Committee, Convention on the Rights of the Child, which has a monitoring body, which is the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. For the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, there's an African Committee of Experts that also monitors that charter. And for the UN, there's also a peer review by states towards states of human rights records in the country, which is called the Universal Periodic Review Process, UPR. So those we will talk about today. So all these processes imply a state report. So the state reports regularly every 5 years, every 4.5, every 3 years, depends on this process. And there's other treaties that I will not mention today, of course, human rights treaties and the SDG monitoring and all that, but today we stick to those. So there's regular opportunities for states to report on how well are they implementing this convention, to have a discussion about improvement to implement. And then we have the opportunity as civil society and children and other stakeholders have opportunities to provide complementary reports. Sometimes we call them parallel reports, complementary reports to provide additional information or sometimes different information from what the state would say. And once the review, they are reviewed based on the civil society information and dialogue with the civil society, dialogue with the state and the reports from the state, there's a concluding observations. It's a list or UPR recommendations. It's a list of recommendations that the state are supposed to implement before the next time they need to report. So that's the idea. And our coming in there, if we don't bring climate and environment issues, then they don't come into the recommendations most likely, unless the committee has the general comment now. But it's not sure up until now, it was very proactive from us, civil society, that these issues were included. This is the process. Usually we will refer to that as our colleagues will intervene, state report, civil society report. Then there is a review by the treaty bodies or the charter bodies, they're called. And then we get the concluding observations. I would like to just tell you that you will get this presentation. We have mapped what were the last reports, concluding observation recommendation that states have gotten. I marked in red the ones that we have been supporting or engaging with or following, but there's so many more which will be useful for you. For Universal Periodic Review, we also have mapped some of the countries that have been reviewed recently. For the African Charter, we have also mapped the ones have been reviewed. And for the ones coming up, I'm not sure yet, but we only know about Burkina Faso, but we will know more as we progress. And the topics that were raised by civil society so far are also varied. Like some of them talk about deforestation in Malawi, Cyclone Freddy. In the Philippines also, it was a typhoon, for example, but maybe in Albania, some would speak about child participation in decision-making on climate. So it varies a lot. And you will see in Ivory Coast, it touches upon education, health, business sector, and it varies really, really much. So we will hear more from colleagues today. The UN, there's also an organization called CIEL that also maps what comes up in UN recommendations. So then I just put the link on the slide and you can check with their website what are the latest on child rights and environment and climate. Then we also will share with you upcoming reporting deadlines. This is the reporting deadlines for civil society. You can have additional submissions if you haven't included the climate environment initially, you can add as during the process. But it's always it's often opportunities to bring these issues up in a monitoring and reporting process. The same for the UPR. Here is just a couple of tools that we will share with you that civil society have been using, and we have been documenting work being done. And now I would like to call my colleague Fatima from Peru, from Acción por los Niños, Peru. Fatima, are you with me?
Hola, ¿qué tal?
Yes. So
Sí,
I will speak in
aquí
English, but
estoy.
Fatima will speak in Spanish. Fatima, you recently supported the preparation of complementary report on the implementation of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, and you have, among other issues, included impacts of climate change and environment in that report. I also see that Peru was before the UPR process recently. I don't know if you've been involved in that, but in any way, would be really interesting to know from you, where are you at in the process? Who was involved in the reporting
Claro que
process?
sí.
Which children were involved? What environmental issues were included in the report? That's most interesting for us to hear right now. And then I will come back later to ask about maybe general comment to all of you. So over to you, Fatima, and I will also go into the language channel. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much to the organizing team. Thank you very much, Elori, for the presentation.
Hola, mi nombre es Fátima Farfán.
Hi, my name is Fatima Farfan. I'm a social specialist in child participation, and today I am representing the NGO Acción por los Niños, Action for Children, and this NGO, together with the Program for Civil Society Participation, we promote the rights of children and the young. We believe that it's very important to request and demand from the government to guarantee quality services in terms of natural disasters that are caused by climate change and global warming. And of course, children are exposed to this. In that respect, I would like to tell you, before we mention the process in which we have participated, some details about the reality that our country goes through at the moment.
todo por los diferentes fenómenos que se han venido
Of
presentando
course,
en
in terms
estos.
of the different phenomena that have been occurring over the last few years, and we will be, of course, be exposed to many of these phenomena in the following months. According to UNICEF, in this year, 2023, from January to May, rains left 264,000 households, more than 80 schools, and several health institutions destroyed, and they were rendered uninhabitable, and there were several lives lost as well, placing, of course, children and teenagers at in a situation of um, being unprotected, and of course, leaving them more exposed to the vulnerabilities provoked by climate change. And given the question that Lauren had asked, I would like to tell you about the process, the follow-up process and reporting, which the collective EPU Peru, where Acción por los Niños is also part of that working team. We had the opportunity of facilitating space so that children and teenagers could write their own report, where they would report on the situations of human rights in Peru, and this report was worked on in 2022. And there they highlighted the importance on many of the important topics, the right to health and the environment.
Algunos de los comentarios que nos
I would
hicieron
like to share with you some of the comments that these children and teenagers gave to us during this follow-up process, this writing and follow-up of this reporting. For instance, Andres, who represents an organization of teenagers from municipalities in Peru, he told us that the right to a healthy environment has not been implemented in the last 5 years. And apart from that, there is a severe contamination of the environment due to spillages and waste. Ruby, another teenager, told us that it's important that the country implements more green areas and promotes, in the case of children and teenagers, more recycling contests. And also, they should provide environmental education through different workshops on caring for the environment, because in Peru there's a lot of environmental contamination, and many of the districts in Peru water is not drinkable. It's being polluted by the different activities, economic activities that unfortunately do have no social responsibility or environmental responsibility. This is how this collective EPU Peru, after the UPR, created their own report together with this report that was written by these teenagers and children, calling it The Situation of Human Rights in Peru. In September this year, 22nd of September, the Council for Human Rights at the UN approved the result of the fourth periodical review, Universal Periodical Review for Peru, and this had the report written by the UN working team on this Universal Periodic Review, where the Peruvian state, and I think this is an achievement that we have now, the Peruvian state has received the recommendations that were given to them, but they have also acquired commitments in a voluntary manner in order to take all these problems into actions. That, of course, these topics are of concern for children and teenagers. We consider this to be an achievement that the civil society organizations of children and teenagers, and they have allowed themselves to position these topics, emphasizing on the higher and superior interest of children. In this way, we as an NGO, Acción por los Niños, we believe that creating these open spaces where we can listen and where children are the protagonists, so they can raise their voices and say what is affecting them. They should not stop speaking. They shouldn't be afraid of speaking, and should not be afraid of not being listened to. That this has to continue so that we can create action generating actors in the future. There's a phrase, and it's that they always, whenever they open up these spaces, when we create these spaces, we always say everything with us and nothing without us. It's a very powerful phrase because these children have the right and the will to collaborate and build reports, write reports, and they have the capacity to be able to write these reports, reports such as this, in order to bring forward the problems that are affecting them in the present. And this also allows them to demand from the Peruvian state, in this case, their right for to a healthy environment.
Y todos los adolescentes, porque ellas y ellos
And they
Sorry to
have they face these problems as a result of inequality that can be present in the different regions or cultures they belong to. I believe that I could
You can go on for a
speak a
long
little
time
bit.
talking about this, Fatima, and I think it's amazing that what you've done to support the children to develop their own reports to these two mechanisms and to include climate change and environmental issues because they themselves have concerns about it, which is really important as a adult civil society to be willing and ready to really give them the space and transfer those messages forward to the relevant mechanisms that are far from the realities of these children. Thank you so much, Fatima. Sorry to interrupt you. I need to give the floor to our colleagues from Malawi. So Henry, if you could also unmute and show yourself. Thank you. Hi, Henry. So you represent the Child Rights Coalition in Malawi. Please, could you tell us more about where you are at and how you've worked together with the environmental partner that is also in the call, Clement, to integrate the question of climate change and environment in both the CRC report, the child rights, the UN CRC, sorry, we said we will not do abbreviations, UN Convention on the Rights of the Child report, and to the African Charter on the Rights of the Child report. So if you could tell us a bit more how you went about and what issues were there in the report, and any tips and tricks you think about that is relevant for colleagues in the call. Thank you. Over to you, Henry.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aurora. Yes, I'm Henry Machemba from NGO Coalition on Child Rights in Malawi. This is a national network of child rights organizations, and work together, among others, in treaty reporting. So our arrangement in Malawi is that for each of the chapters in the report, we set up teams of professionals, teams of experts, based on the areas of maybe expertise. And for each team, we identify a team leader to lead the process of documenting that particular chapter. And later we consolidate as a team and have one report. That's for the CSO report, which is called CSO or Child Informed Report. And on the other aspect, we also have the children's report, child-led report. We support children from various child participation spaces, like, for example, Children's Parliament. We have the Children Corners. We have learners' councils in school, in primary schools. We have child reference group and other child participation spaces. So from these participation spaces, children are drawn together and supported. Probably we identify up to 10 children to lead the process of generating evidence, putting together the ideas and compiling their own report for each district. So for the CSO Child Informed Report, in order to ensure that we integrate climate change and environment, we put together a team of CSOs or CSO leaders in the environment and climate change sector, which is led by the National Youth Network on Climate Change, but also the Civil Society Network on Climate Change. So working together with various individual organizations and various interested experts, they came together, they were assigned to work on the chapter on climate change and environment for both the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child Reporting Mechanism, but also the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. When the report was compiled and submitted for the African Charter, we have just appeared before the Committee of Experts on 14th November this year. So we escorted children, 12 children from Malawi who appeared and presented their issues, including the issues on climate change and the environment. Listening from the children's report, they have raised a number of issues related to access to information on early warning and preparedness for disaster-prone areas, but also during a response, the children, I observed that their issues are not well prioritized by authorities when they are responding. Giving examples that the first, when disasters happen, the first to be affected are schools, which are used as evacuation camps, but also when during the response programs, the need for children to play, maybe play spaces are not there. The basic needs for maybe young girls are not prioritized, for example, sanitary facilities and the like. Issues of maybe alternative education modalities are not prioritized in most cases, but also the education needs, for example, the education, learning and teaching materials that are maybe have been affected during the flood or maybe disaster, they are not prioritized in most cases. Another example is maybe during the COVID, when the schools closed and the schools children were in homes for over 5 months, and that had a lot of implications. But also we have some areas where even though there are no flooding, we have areas that have extremely very high temperatures, for example, Chukwawa and Sanje district, where even though we don't have rains, but the schools are still disrupted because the temperatures are too high, and the school education authorities normally they order that children should be in school for maybe 3 hours, and then they can knock off as early as possible to be in their homes. So these are some of the issues that children have raised. For tips, for us to achieve this, there's a need for a lot of coordination and collaboration with various players, because the CSOs at different levels in terms of capacity, technical capacity and financial capacity, and how they are structured. So as a network, we make sure we coordinate all the players in the sector, both big players and young players, so that each one of them has a voice, has a space to contribute something to the level, to the best of their knowledge, so that and expertise, so that they also attribute and identify themselves with the process. Yeah.
Thank
so
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henry, for this quite detailed information, and really it's encouraging to see that you have been building on this collaboration you have with Clement. Clement, if you can unmute to, you are representing the National Youth Network on Climate Change in Malawi, and your partnership within the SIDA program with the Chavez Coalition as one of the actors. And so perhaps I can maybe ask you, Clement, just one question perhaps on this. How was it to engage in these processes for you as a climate organization? Perhaps you can just tell us a bit more on that, Clement, so that we can get an idea quite briefly before moving to the next speaker, would really be good to hear from you. I don't see you, Clement, but I
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Roche, for giving me the opportunity to highlight on how we get engaged with NGOs with CRM, especially when they are compiling and facilitating the UPR reports and other critical reports that they produce and present to relevant stakeholders that include African Union and other platforms. So basically, our role as expert kind of group in issues to do with climate change is just to provide insights. For instance, normally we get information handy as regarded to weather, as regarded to climate change. So most of the time when we have been involved in this kind of process, our role is just to highlight what is happening around, more especially in areas that are highly affected or districts that are prone to climate change and disasters. So we highlight the statistics, we highlight the data and the status quo in that particular year. So for instance, this year, as Henry mentioned, we highlighted how climate change affected children and adolescent girls in sectors like education, in sectors like health, and sectors like health and nutrition. So our role basically is just to highlight to the children the status of how climate change is impacting the children in those areas by providing them with statistics so that they can have also informed mind as they bring out their key recommendations to the African Committee of Experts and also UPR or UN CRC Committee of Experts. So basically our role is just to provide statistics and the data in as far as how climate change is affecting children based on the rights of a child.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Clement. I think it's good for all of us here in the call to see how you know each actor can play a role here, and also the importance of data and information to inform. You cannot just ask children, oh, what do you feel and think about the environment alone. You also need to give them a bit of information so they can base their opinions and their recommendation on. So that's really a very important aspect. And I'm noting, but I will not give justice to everything that's being said because of the time limitation. I will give that to Elvis in the end to collect all this, but just highlighting all the rights impacted that you have mentioned, all of you until now, and how education is impacted, health is impacted, etc. I would like to encourage you all to write questions in the Q&A box, and as we listen to our five speakers now. And also I will open for questions just after. I would like to really encourage you to put questions. You can write in Spanish, you can write in French, you can write in English in the Q&A box that you see on your screens, so that we can collect those questions. And you can put any comments you want in the chat box. So we're sure to collect it. And if we have time to give you even like to speak orally during the call, we will do that, but just to make sure you don't miss what you want to say. Elvis, I see you put your video on. Could you wait a little bit, Elvis, so that I can give you the floor a bit later on this, or is it a quick one? It's okay. Okay, thank you, Elvis. Thank you so much. I would like to turn to Monica, who's our colleague from Colombia, Save the Children Colombia. She's the Child Rights Governance Coordinator. Monica, if you can put your camera on. You have recently worked together with other actors to develop a Universal Periodic Review, UPR submission, where you also refer to climate change and environment impacts on children's rights. And we saw from the previous review that the state also had its session recently. So it would really be great to hear from you a bit more. Who was involved? What child rights, what environmental issues have been raised? Did you involve children, etc.? So over to you. And I know you sent me some slides, which I included here. Let me know, guide me, so I know which one to put when. Thank you so much.
Of course, claro que sí, no hay problema. Bueno, buenos días.
Surely, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon to you all. In the case of the report for Colombia, this was presented and launched on International Children's Day, which is the 20th of November. And we did that in collaboration with many other NGOs through something called Alliance for Childhood in Colombia. What I would like to share with you in particular is about Colombia is that we have linked one second, please. Sorry, somebody, the computer was asking me something. Okay, I was telling you that in Colombia, we have handled this in a different way. And when we presented this report, I would like to contextualize you. These were the children who were contributing from the different regions to this report. We presented 2 reports through the Alliance for Childhood in Colombia. One was from the NGOs and the other one was from the children themselves. So these 2 reports went together. Here on the slide, it's very small, but there are several statements in terms of the rights that have been violated in terms of the guarantee of these rights for children. In terms of climate change, of course, without ignoring the influence of Colombia in terms of safety and the post-conflict era in which we are, the safety of children, of course, is being threatened all the time, and the climate change situations also impact them. So in terms of climate change, children mentioned that through the Save the Children report, 60.75% of children who have been asked, they consider that adults are not doing enough to take care of the environment. And specifically about Colombia, we made recommendations about recognizing the fact that the children's rights are being affected due to climate change, especially the rights to health and nutrition. In Guajira, towards the north of the country,
Geográficamente más privilegiados.
this is one of the geographically more privileged terrains or areas because of its location. But this is where more water scarcity is found in Colombia. These 2 things have never been linked, and this is a huge touristic area, one of the most beautiful areas in Colombia. However, there are children die from malnutrition. We have also wanted to link mechanisms so that the participation of children is part of the Escazú's agreement. Go to the next slide, please. In this following slide, I would like to share with you the fact that here we have several photographs that show the direct participation of children in several of those planning tools that we have in Colombia. We have the National Plan for Development, and we have the Development Plan for local jurisdictions. So children have had 3 to 4 different meetings in which they have participated, but taken into account that participating is having a part of. That means that they're not just being called to express their opinion, but they're being called to do the follow-up to those opinions and to do an assessment. And that's what we're doing. And referring specifically to Apple, please go to the next slide, please.
Ustedes pueden ver que están los 2 reportes.
You can see that we have both reports. In fact, I can go after my intervention, I can give you the links to this information, but what I would really like to say is that children have been a part of. So if you click on that, the one with the heart, that's a YouTube video which illustrates how children have participated. Minute 15 of that video, in minute 15 of that video, we can see one of the children who participated actively in this EPO, which is the alternative report that they do. And what they did was kind of a news program, which is called Impact. This is the one with the bird here on the right. And there the children mentioned that we need to strengthen the mechanisms to develop environmental knowledge and skills. So they wanted to expand more in terms of the fact that education should not only provide information, but also the opportunity to turn climate action into an opportunity. Leave it here. I suspect that I ran out of time, but I'm here for any question. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you so much, Monica. So interesting to hear, and also that you have highlighted also elements that we all know, but still so important. What is meaningful child participation in this process? What child participation also brings for climate action? Creates also more climate action and more aware climate action and so much more. So I'm not giving really justice to everything you said, but thank you so much. I would like to turn now to our last panelist before we open for questions. So Amalie, you represent Save the Children Denmark. You're the senior legal counsel, and you recently it's the first time that Save in Denmark engages with a coalition of partners in the new procedure of the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child called Simplified Reporting Procedure. And you're at the early stages of that process. And this is why I put the star at the early stages, because you contacted me at a certain point because you wanted to see how we can integrate climate and environment in this process. And I think that's why it's also very important for us to have you here today, because you have all these colleagues who have done it, but also colleagues who would like to do it, and you're really in between. So you want to integrate climate and environment in the upcoming process. Yes. Colleagues, just to highlight that the simplified reporting procedure is this new procedure that the UN committee has decided will be the standard procedure from next year for all states. And that is the time now for Denmark to do it. It starts with questions to the states. So civil society can suggest questions that the committee can bring to the states. So the states will first get questions, and then they can submit their report, the state report, and then the civil society report. So it's a bit different. It's supposed to be quicker, but we'll see what happens. But yes, over to you, Amalie, to tell us a bit more of how you're doing it, what you've done so far, and what's your thinking, maybe some questions you may have also for the others, so that we bring it with us in the discussion that follows. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you so much, Laura, for inviting me, and thank you so much for organizing this webinar. I find it extremely helpful and useful to meet other people who are in the same process or have been in the same process. So just to tell you all how we're going about this in Denmark practically, some time ago, I volunteered that Save the Children will lead the process of civil society organizations reporting to the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. And this will start in 2024. We don't know exactly when we'll start the process, but we are awaiting that information. So right now we are preparing all the issues that we want to report on, and there are these clusters that you usually follow in the reporting of different topics. And when we started the process, there was not yet a climate cluster, and there was not yet a final general comment 26. But I proposed to civil society in Denmark that we should include climate in the reporting, because I thought at this stage in time, as a child's right organization, it would be insane looking back, let's say in 5 years, and saying, oh, we didn't report anything on climate, because climate is so interconnected with the other rights that we work on. So luckily the civil society community here was very positive, and then we started brainstorming how can we go about this. In the meantime, yes, I spoke to Laura, and we also got General Comment 26, the final text, which I think is absolutely fantastic, because that's a point I would like to make here, is that I think in order to make General Comment 26 come to life, it's important to be quite concrete. And I mean, I've never tried using General Comment 26, so I can't claim to be an expert at all. I'm just legal counsel, but I do think that the text, it opens up for us some opportunities that we can actually use in a quite concrete way for the Committee on the Rights of the Child to get back to the state and say, how exactly are you taking action on this and that? So what we decided to do was to include children in this process. I mean, the civil society organizations working on this reporting to the committee, none of us are climate experts, which is the children's rights experts. So we thought it would be very nice to include some experts, and we also really want to include children in our work. That at Save the Children, it's part of our mandate to also have the children on board, so to say. So basically, I decided together with the others to contact the biggest youth climate organization in Denmark. I mean, the ones that we knew about, and I've been contacting several civil society partners to say, who do you know who could be relevant for this? Are you aware of any green youth movements that it would be worth contacting? And that turned out to be quite a good idea, because we got some good inputs. I wrote out to these organizations, and some of them didn't have time, and some of them are children who go to school and are super busy. But we actually got very positive feedback from everyone, and have done now in preparation for the upcoming reporting interviews with these different groups who wanted to participate. But we're doing it in quite an open way, so it's not child-led reporting. You could say we're still the one keeping the reins at the civil society group for reporting. We simply do the interviews, and then we inform them that we're very grateful for any input. And some of these young people, they really know a lot about the climate, so we also get very good inputs. But I think essentially at the end of the day, it will be the civil society organizations deciding what do we take on board in this report. And I mean, in some ways, it could maybe be seen as a bit controversial that the group of adults are saying, well, we will decide finally what will be in the report. I think the youth that we've contacted have been positive about it, so there's not an issue there. And it does have, I think, the benefit that we can make the puzzle ourselves of what will have the greatest impact, because some of the young green organizations, they've come back with very like hands-on, you have to talk about the marine environment. We have this report that we can give you, which speaks exactly into part of the General Comment 26, and that's really where I want to get at, to say, okay, we take the text from the General Comment, say what does it say about marine environment. We look at a marine environment report and says what does the child youth organizations say about this, and then we sort of apply the facts to the General Comment. I think that will get us very far. We've also, especially from younger children, had some comments where you think probably we're going to leave this out, and there I think it's fine that we can select a little bit ourselves. There was a very sweet girl who said, well, I mean, when talking about climate anxieties and fears, which is common in Denmark, that I mean, children are worried about climate in the future, she said, but me being a green young activist, I'm actually not that worried, because I speak to a lot of politicians and they tell me that they have a plan. And I mean, I thought it was lovely that she wasn't concerned or worried, but for our purpose of getting the state to be held responsible to some extent, I maybe prefer including a little bit more sort of substantial, we do see issues and what can we do about it, and what are we obliged to, what is the state obliged to in the general comment. Yeah.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt you, but actually it's really great that you have talked a lot about general comment, the use of general comment, because that was the next question I was going to raise to everybody in the call and the panel. I mean, I think in relation to, I'm sure many of the colleagues in the call will have opinions about this, but in relation to child-led report versus child-informed report, I mean, we have done for many years before starting with child-led reports, we did child-informed reports. So of course, in the end, it was the adults deciding on the content, but that does not prevent to have child-led reports as well and information shared with the committee by these children and youth if they want to send their own information. But I would let the other colleagues to speak more about this. I think that it's very interesting, and it's really timely for you because you're lucky to have the general comment now, so you can really pick from it, refer to it immediately as you develop the information on the status of implementation of children's right to a healthy environment in Denmark. So really interesting, and really keep us informed of how things develop. I will just like to ask maybe if there's anybody else from the panel and maybe from the participants who would like to respond more about how General Comment 26 can inform your work, your reporting work, monitoring, and advocacy work. Reports in the previous webinar, we had the reflections about, you prepare once a report and then you can use this information in different channels. And that's what Malawi you've been doing. I know colleagues from Zambia have been doing this. In Peru, you had UPR and CRC. I'm sure that many of you do it, but since every new information we get can inform future work, so general comment is our Bible, so green Bible for child rights, let's say. And yeah, just raising this to you. Maybe Clement, everybody who wants to speak, just raise your hand. Also participants, please raise your hand if you want to speak or ask questions so that we can move smoothly to this part of the webinar. I see Clement and then Fatima for now. Over to you, Clement. Thank you.
Thank you. So basically, two things for me, I think, as far as comment number 26 is concerned. I see general comments as a basis or as a document that provides a basis for advocacy for non-state actors, more especially advocating for child rights, because general comment number 26 highlights or brings out key and sticky areas which state parties needed to consider in as far as protecting child rights is concerned. So one, it provides that basis for advocacy. Second, I think it also provides the basis for capacity building for children. We need to scale up our interventions. We need to team up and start building capacity of the children in as far as issues that are raised in the general comment number 26 is concerned. I think gone are the days that we need to speak for the children, but they need to speak for themselves. But they can only speak for themselves if they know and understand in the context climate change is happening, and also how their rights are being affected, and how duty bearers need to come in to make sure that they address the challenges that they are facing as children. Thank you, and over.
Thank you so much, Clement, for your reflections on the use of the general comment. Fatima, over to you.
Hola, ¿me logran escuchar?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Sí.
Nosotros pensamos que contar con la...
We believe that having the general comments 26 of the United Nations Convention for Children's Rights as a vital instrument, and that has been built from the voices of teenagers and children, and they have produced some friendly materials so that children and teenagers from different countries can read this information. And there it is explained that the states have to assume this commitment to the rights of children in terms of the environment and climate change. And it explains what states have to do. I consider that it's very important to do collective surveillance and monitoring from civil society organizations and teenager or adolescent organizations, so that the different states fulfill their role and the commitments they have assumed, and so that we can have accountability. It's also very important to continue strengthening the capacities in leadership
a niñas, niños y adolescentes
directed to children and teenagers, with the objective of them being empowered to create public incidents, whether it's through meetings with authorities. For instance, in Peru, we have the opportunity of supporting the teenage organizations or youth organizations, and we support them in their meetings with local authorities, so they request accountability in terms of also how they're creating public budgets, participatory budgets. And this is all done in environmental topics, so that the children and teenagers who are citizens, even if they are underage, they request that, and we require the authorities to see them as citizens who they have to be accountable for, because everything that's being reviewed and everything they do will affect this population if it's not done in the right time. We also consider in our NGO that the digital platforms are a very important medium, so that children and teenagers can create public incidents. And it's very important and interesting to be able to support these processes where they can speak up and where they can be listened to. And I think the role that we have as civil society organizations is basically provide support to them, accompany them. We should leave aside this adult-centric view. And of course, we have our own agenda and we want them to be listened to, but it's actually their agenda. The agenda of the children and teenagers. It's the problems and the topics they would like to bring to the discussion, and we have to accompany them. We have to support them constantly, and we provide technical assistance, as it was mentioned before. It's very important to provide them with the right information, depending on the age group, of course, so that these materials are friendly and that the information is friendly, and in the end they can understand this information and be able to correlate that to this reality they are going through, which is really a reality of social inequality with different problems that are related to pollution, environmental pollution. So we consider that their voices are listened to in the different realms, both digital and in person.
Yes, thank you, Fatima. Now, a really important point you're raising of the importance of adapting the information about these things, child-friendly information, digital platforms used by youth, adapting also the platforms where they can engage and learn, but also the collective monitorings by different actors. So really important points you raise. Just reacting to the fact that I think in the call we also have our colleagues from Ivory Coast and from Albania, who have been involved in supporting children to prepare their own reports. In Albania, the children reported specifically on child rights, on the environmental problems they have. They decided to focus their child-led report on this, and they're documenting this right now. I don't know if Adlira is on the call still, but if she is, maybe Adlira, you want to share, and also Yiryasu from our Ivory Coast, or maybe the partners from the Forum des ONG, if you would like to share anything from what you've been doing that could be relevant, tips, tricks I know you have included it in the African Committee of Experts report. When you reported to the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, you also had child-led report where climate environment has been included, and both of them have used a tool that has been developed by the SERI Coalition, the Children's Environmental Rights Initiative Coalition, which is a guide about how to report to the UNCRC, but our colleagues have even tried to use it for the African Committee, African Charter reporting. Yeah, so I don't know if any of you, are you here, Iriasu or Elira, you want to say something? Because you... I don't see the whole...
I think it's not in the room.
They're not there. Okay. What I will tell you is more like this, because they would like to, they're documenting and they want inputs. They're using the How to Child Rights series methodology, and they want input from their peers. Okay, in the Albania case, it's in Albanian and in English. And in the Ivory Coast case, it's in French. And unofficial translation in English we will use. But they're asking now in December until in December for inputs. For those of you who haven't engaged yet, you can also provide input, and every input you can actually write me. June will put in the chat box my email. So if you want to provide input to any of these cases, you want to be involved, or your partners want to be involved, just let us know.
Laura, can you hear me? Our colleagues from Albania and Côte d'Ivoire are trying to speak, but they cannot access the mic. Is there a way that someone can open their mic centrally?
Okay, yes, thank you, Connie, for spotting that.
Yes, if they're
I'm sure Gerard can help them.
they need to raise their hand, and we can allow them to turn on the mic.
Perhaps because I don't see any hands raised for now. Yeah, I do see now. Okay.
Lamin.
Okay. Maybe we have very little time, so perhaps I will. We have very little time, so we will have 2 minutes. Is any of you able to write down in the chat instead of talking? I will keep the ones who want to speak. So perhaps Edlira, maybe quickly. Iriasu and Muhammadu, very, very quickly. Thank you so much.
Elvira,
we'll
have
do this
the microphone.
Hello?
Yes, Edlira, we hear you. Thank you so much.
Okay, hello everybody. I was trying to speak, but I was not able. So very shortly, our Save the Children National Office of Albania has supported a group of children to write a child-led alternative report as part of UNCRC alternative reporting process at country level during 2022, focusing specifically on the rights of children for a healthy environment. It was a great experience indeed, a learning process for all of us, for children, for us, and we are indeed trying to document this case study now, as Laura already mentioned, and it will be indeed a specific case study focused on the child-led reporting, to particularly to UNCRC on climate change and environment. And the idea is that through this case study, the idea is to support and provide guidance to child rights practitioners, which are working directly for children's rights, civil society organization working at all levels, national, local, regional, and as well as groups of children who are interested or who would be interested to be involved in UNCRC alternative reporting. The case study is meant to be kind of a very practical tool, and it definitely contributes to strengthening civil society capacity to apply the human rights-based approach to development programming, including advocacy. So we are going to translate it in Albanian and English. I have French and Arabic, and Spanish version will be as well available and supported from Save the Children Sweden. So that's in very brief. We have already shared the first draft with the colleagues who have already shared kind of interest to contribute in the reviewing process. We are looking forward to receive comments, and as soon as we will review them, we are going to share the final tool with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edlira. So yeah, I put in the chat, please write to me. So because that way I can channel to Edlira, I can forward you the draft. But let me know if you're interested, because it's happening now in December. So really important to know if you want to be involved. And everybody who contributes will be recognized. This is the whole idea with the How to Child Rights series as well. Thank you, Edlira. I could say more because you have already spoken in previous webinars we have on the website, more information from even a child involved in this process, but not for now. So Iriyasu, if you want to speak as well to share your demand also for inputs for the case study, s'il te plaît. Merci. Bienvenue.
Alors, merci beaucoup, Laure. J'espère qu'on m'entend. C'est bon? OK, merci beaucoup. Alors, bonsoir tout le monde. Je suis Iriyasu Koulibaly.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I am Iriyasu. I'm in charge of the project of the CEDA program in Ivory Coast. It's a great pleasure being here with you in this webinar, which is really interesting. And just as Albania, we're here in Ivory Coast with the African Charter for the Human Rights of Children. We have been able to work with the civil society, but also with the different organizations of children to produce 2 alternative reports on the African Charter for Children Welfare. We had a civil society report, and thanks to our support, we had a group of children, and we managed to integrate some questions that relate to the environment. Thank you very much to all of you who participated in this, and we're now documenting all this process. And I expect that before December next year, we'll have the first report. And if anyone would like to contribute to this document, we could use Lauren so that they could help us and be able to produce a high-quality document that would allow us to be sharing this with the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Just a moment, please, because I need to. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, sorry. Merci beaucoup, Iriyasu. Thank you so much. I wanted to say it's so inspiring, the work you've been doing, and for many countries, from what I understand, in the West Africa region, it's going to be a really useful tool, the case studies, for their work towards the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. So thank you so much, Iriyasu. So colleagues, if you want to be involved in the inputs to this process, please write to me. And I think June has been putting the email in the chat box. I see that somebody has already taken down their hand, or maybe did I miss something? I just see that I don't see any more hands on. If I miss anyone, just let me know. I know there's many questions you may have coming later because there's a lot to digest from today, but I hope that you find these interventions we've had really useful for you. And I'm sure you also may sit with a lot of other experience that you would like to share. So please keep in touch and let us be aware of whatever is going on that is really promoting the right to a healthy environment, through reporting, through other ways as well, and using the general comment 26. I just want to ask you again to go to Mentimeter We will assess a bit how much you've learned from today before giving the floor to Elvis Fukala to give final words to this webinar. So you see www.menti.com and you have a code 52715598. And if you have the link, you can also click directly from the chat box. The question to you is this one then, again, in a scale of 1 to 10, how would you assess your level of understanding of civil society reporting on child rights to a healthy environment? In the beginning, it was very much on the left side. So I'm happy to see it's filling on the right side. Thank you so much. Great to know. I know many of you may not have access now to fill in this, but it's really good to see that many of you, at least it looks more colorful on the right side, which means that we have provided some sort of information about this work that helps you feel a bit more equipped for planning in 2024. How would you assess now your level of understanding of the usefulness or how General Comment 26 will have a role in reporting in the future, in monitoring and advocacy on children's right to a healthy environment, and in reporting in particular for this webinar? Wow, I also see a lot of right side colorful. Okay, this is really, really encouraging. I'm really happy to see that this webinar has been useful in a way for some of you. And not many have answered for now. I know not everybody has access to this, but really, really helpful. You can also put in the chat or in the all kind of images that you can use here in the whatever, thumb up or something like that. Okay, thank you so much. So now I would like to give the floor to our colleague, our Elvis Fukala. You are a manager of the Child Rights Unit at, wait a minute, Elvis, I forgot something before I give you the floor. I forgot the last question, which is actually very important for Planning 24. Sorry, Elvis, you see, I want to hear from you so quickly. What areas on child rights and the environment would you like to learn more about or have peer exchanges on in 2024? What areas would you like to deep dive more into to learn from others in? If you can write those ideas, we'll keep that page open. So you can add whenever you think of, do you think we need deep dive into a certain area of the general comment? Do you think we need to learn more about some areas of reporting, child-led reporting, child-informed reporting? I don't know, I'm just throwing some ideas on how to increase quality of reporting on child rights and environment to various UN and regional mechanisms. So continue writing on this. Even if I leave the screen, you can still have it accessible, so you can always write. And it will show slowly but surely. And I will now give you the floor, Elvis, as we watch this screen. I would like to give the floor to Elvis Fukala, who's the manager of the Child Rights Unit at the Center for Human Rights at the University of Pretoria. Great to have you on board, Elvis, and I will give you directly the mic so that you can give us some reflections from what you've heard and also a bit looking ahead, some maybe advice on the way forward. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Laure. Merci beaucoup. Thank you for first of all, inviting me to this wonderful webinar. Coming here, I had ideas in my mind of what to expect, but I have to admit that the ideas have been blown away by the comments that have come through and the contribution that has come through from most of the colleagues. So I could speak, one, as someone who works in children's rights issues within the academic space and has published and all whatnot around this area. And then two, I can also speak, as someone who has a lot of interest in child participation and has also written and actually developed a model just next to Laura Lundy's model on the issue of child participation. And I can also speak, as an external member of the African Children's Rights Committee on the Working Group on Children and Climate Change. So the reason why I brought these three elements of my work into this space is that these three elements gave me the ability to appreciate everything and all the contributions that you have made and from different parts of the world. So I took some notes. It was not easy to catch up with the brilliant presentations, but what I took note on was the fact that in all your work, in all that the work that the colleagues have presented on, they touch base on how to involve children in raising issues and concerns around child participation or climate, or General Comment 26 of the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child. So we heard from Fatima, who spoke from Peru, from Action for Children, who spoke about how they have involved children in such processes. In fact, actual involvement where children have been able to express their opinion in reporting processes and also to express the extent to which climate affects their well-being or their rights. So in the same breath and intensity of that reporting from Fatima, we also heard from Henry. What Henry what Henry did and Clement, I think, in Malawi, is that they, also involved children, put the children into further groups of 10, and then appointed children will report from all these groups. They have taken, their issues a little bit further, and to bring it in front of the committee, they said the 14th of November. So unfortunately, when you went to Addis, I had left Addis. I left Addis on the 11th of November. So we couldn't meet, but I did follow up to hear about your report and what you submitted or presented at the committee. And that was quite welcoming to hear more about it now, right here. And then we also heard from Monica in Colombia, who also spoke about the processes and collaboration with Save the Children with other organizations in Colombia in order to gather children's opinion. And they have actually gone further to present two reports, one which is written by children and the other which is presented by NGOs, that collaboration. That is actually very critical contribution that came from Monica, because in the children's report, in my opinion, presents an honest opinion of what they think and what they, would like to see as changes. And then we also heard from Amelie from Denmark, who is actually at the start of the process. And this is what I think, makes it very interesting in this conversation, is that from the start of the process, you're able to learn now from those who have at least made some progress. Yurisa from Cote d'Ivoire, and other colleague who also spoke from Armenia on what has been going on in all those countries. What we take from this and all these conversations and the presentations that we have made here is that even though we sit here as adults and represent these opinions on what children have to do, some of these rights and those elements of climate-related impact or environmental shocks that affect children, is that it is children's opinion that count a little bit stronger into such action plans. And the reason is because even though we develop these strategies today, those who implement these strategies in the future will be children. So bringing them on board now empowers them and capacitates them to know how to implement those strategies when they go forward. So you've all done a wonderful work. I've learned so much from all of you, and I just can't wait that in our further engagements with how to write, or how to child write rather, and on these conversations, that we'll be able, to work more. I also look further to open up more conversations or collaboration with us at the Center for Human Rights and lead the Children's Rights Unit. And I'm happy that we can also work on developing strategies and how we take this further. Well done to all of you. I admire your work. Well done. Thank you. And thank you to Laura and the organizers. It was, I'm sure the colleagues will allow me to echo this, that it was a worthwhile, webinar that has been well received. And I could stay the whole day, just listen to those elements of child participation.
We will send you, Elvis, the recording from the other one from the morning, so you have a bit more to listen to from colleagues who shared at different stages in different countries as well. Don't worry. I also could stay the whole day. Thank you so much, Elvis. Thank you
so much.
very much. I will give maybe just the last words to Eva to close the meeting. And I want to thank you all very much for joining us, for the panelists, for the interpreters, for everybody behind the scene. It looks like nothing, but it's a lot of preparation for this kind of webinars to make them happen and also to be available in different languages. And thanks to the FIDA Civil Society program also for really allowing us to do these things. So over to Eva.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
You. I will be very brief, and thank you, Elvis, for your observations and reflections and the kind words. And we are really looking forward to continuing working with you and talking about this particular area, climate change. I also want to thank the participants for their very interesting and I would say thoughtful experiences that you have shared with us. And we are also looking forward to continuing having these discussions and also seeing how the general comment particularly will be used. It's a lot of interesting things that you have brought up, and we will really be looking forward to learning more about what will happen, how the general comment will be used. So just to concluding by saying we wish you all success in this work, and we think that this is just the start, of course, of a journey where we'll learn more about child rights and climate change and a healthy environment. So thank you very much. Goodbye.
Gracias.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias. Dr. Elvis, I think we need to get in touch, as you rightly said. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Elvis. Thank you so much. Keep in touch.